That's what she said. Oh. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. It is I, Joe, America's favorite podcast host, and this week I'm joined by Brett, and for some reason that Cody guy who's always here. We'll get into our main topic as always in a little bit here, but first let's take a minute to talk about some other stuff we've been up to recently. And either of you gents been up to anything interesting?
Well,
Hmm.
I just got back home about I guess about 4 hours ago now. From we went downstate to see a show called Paranormal Cirque, as in like Cirque du
Ooh.
Soleil, that kind of spelling of Cirque. And it essentially it turned out to be like a horror and Halloween kind of themed circus, more or less, really. There were some elements of like Cirque du Soleil where it's like a lot of like acrobatic stuff and like aerial kind of stunts, and some like there actually wasn't a lot of like story kind of elements worked into it, but there was some. It was pretty interesting overall, and it was just really fun, and a lot of like crazy stunts, like people shooting crossbows like backwards and
Oh.
shooting balloons out of people's mouths, and um like lots of there's like a whole magic section that was really cool. And the video I shared with you guys of that guy like running around on that huge contraption that was spinning
Yeah.
around, that was
Yeah,
like
that was crazy.
it was like the entire height of the tent, like he was in the roof of the tent at that when he was at the top of that. So um yeah, overall it was a really good show. I enjoyed it a lot. That was in Ann Arbor, Michigan here. And they actually have, I think they have another show today's their last day in Ann Arbor, and then they go to, I believe, Indiana next week.
Hmm.
So you two might be close enough. You could consider going to that possibly, or
Ooh, I
anybody
try to
listening
stay out
is,
of Indiana as much as I can. Sorry,
well,
Indiana
Same.
listeners.
understandable. But
Not that I don't like fireworks or strip clubs. I do, but
Oh.
uh,
What about you, Cody? Up to anything fun?
no, I actually can't even like fluff and say I have a lot of interesting things going on. It's really just
Please
been
don't
prep.
fluff on air.
It's just yeah, right. It's the fluffer, you know. I really just have been getting ready for Halloween and trying to get all my video games set up and spent a little bit of time more last couple days here trying to get some of the like non-buildy constructy movie parts down, like some of the trivia and some of the elements for some of the other games. But it has been fun, I will say. Friday, yeah, Friday, I think I just like got home and started just more or less ripping my basement apart and was like, trying to actually visualize now that I've had all these concepts for months where stuff's going to go and how it's actually going to fit. And quickly found that space, as always, is at a premium with some ideas I have. And we're going to be expanding into a couple areas of the house that I did not plan to expand into, but I
Ooh.
apparently have more games than I thought I had, to the point where we're going to have even some more announcements coming out this Wednesday. So, yeah, all told here, a little behind the scenes pod exclusive. I think we will be running 19 screens at once
My God.
with people here. So,
wow,
yeah.
I hope your electrical box is up to running that much stuff at one time.
Yeah, well, that's, I guess, actually a little bit of the benefit of having it slightly spread out into some new areas, is maybe that'll relieve a little tension on some of the
Yeah.
fuses.
That's fair.
I think the main basement room's still going to be like, what are you doing to us? But
Nice.
yeah, excited.
Well, I've been up to a lot of stuff, so I'm gonna spend the next 20 minutes talking about that.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Well, briefly, I will say last weekend, my wife and I had a little mini getaway. We spent 3 nights in Saugatuck, Michigan, which is kind of a nice little touristy town right on the lake. And there's a lot of great restaurants and some nice shops there. So I just want to recommend try to have a little getaway now and again, even if it's not far from where you live. Like Saugatuck is about 45 minutes from us, and it feels like a vacation going there. So check it out. And, look for areas around where you live that you can maybe have a little getaway. Um, we did also have most of this past week off together, and one of those days we decided to take another trip about an hour away in Michigan to Kalamazoo
Hmm.
to visit a pizza restaurant that we had been talking about going to for a long time called Bilbo's, which I am actually wearing a hat from right now. It's this weird, like, very lightly Hobbit themed restaurant. It's called Bilbo's. There's like a couple signs with like quotes from Tolkien and some art from Middle Earth and stuff, but otherwise it just kind of feels like a like pub from the 80s or something. But that was fun. Totally not related to anything else we might be talking about tonight. The Bilbo thing. I wanted to mention actually, we also in the past few days have watched not one but two films from Mexican director Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, which ones?
Actually, when we were in Saugatuck, we watched Crimson Peak,
Oh, Lord.
which was one I was like, the trailers looked awesome, but I'm a wuss, so I was like afraid to really watch it. But I've been curious about it ever since it came out. It's got Tom Hiddleston and I can never remember the name of the actress who's like the other lead, but
Actually, Tom Hiddleston is not in that movie,
no, who is?
according to Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, it's not a very good movie. I'll just cut to the chase. It's beautiful. I mean, Guillermo del Toro, if nothing else, always like builds beautiful sets and has a great, eye for stunning shots and all that stuff. It feels, appropriately spooky for October, but it's really not plot wise, everything else. It's not a great movie. But what is a great movie is the
Oh,
other Guillermo del Toro movie we watched, which is The Devil's Backbone, which is, I think it's from like 2001. It's an older movie. It is in
hmm.
Spanish,
Okay.
and it's about a young boy who gets kind of abandoned at an orphanage during the Spanish Civil War. And this isn't a spoiler because it's in the marketing and everything, but there's a ghost that lives there. And maybe there are some other secrets to be unraveled. Um, it's listed as like a gothic horror movie, I think. It's really, I don't know if I'd even honestly call it a horror movie, even though it does have a ghost and there's some violence and stuff, but really it's just a very kind of well-made drama with some kind of paranormal trappings thrown into it. But I would really recommend anyone check that movie out. It's again The Devil's Backbone. It was actually on a list. I was going to say one of our friends, Justin, my podcast nemesis, shared a list of the 100 greatest horror films of all time, according to some website, and that movie was on that list. So
Was it his own website?
it was not. I think it was
Okay.
like Variety or something. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention I've been up to.
Jeez.
I know, I told you.
This guy.
Going back to the Bilbo connection and Tolkien, I've been enjoying a Tolkien adaptation that it's honestly been kind of blowing me away. It's remarkably well written. It has some just really incredible acting in it. It's literally as close to the source material as you could ever like anyone could ever try to achieve with any sort of adaptation.
Swear to God, if the words
Uh,
Leonard Nimoy come out of your mouth.
no, I mean, it's
Okay.
like seriously, it's just astonishing. It is The Fellowship of the Rings, the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, in audiobook form as read by Andy Serkis.
In the Gollum voice?
Well, interesting you should bring that up. He does, I want to say it was 126 different voices in this
Oh, it's
audiobook.
awesome.
It is amazing. Like, it is seriously incredible. So I have loved the Lord of the Rings movies since they came out. I've watched the extended edition so many times, and I've always wanted to read the books, but for some reason, I've sat down to try to do it a couple times, and it just felt too dense to me or something. I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. But I recently learned that during the pandemic, Andy Serkis, Gollum himself, sat down and did audiobook narration for The Hobbit and the three Lord of the Rings books. And he does character voices for like, I think it is literally like 126 different voices he does. It's interesting because he's kind of doing impressions of the actors from the movies.
Oh, wow.
Like, his not only is he doing Gollum because he is Gollum, but like Gandalf sounds like Sir Ian McKellen, like his Samwise really sounds like Sean Astin Samwise, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, as a fan of the films, I enjoy that because for me it makes it easier to kind of keep track of which character is which, but
Tell me
it is
when,
just
when he does the impression for Boromir, he's just like, "Dear audience, an audio file is not obtainable for Boromir as he dies too soon." Played by, of course, Sean Bean.
no.
But
I mean, he does definitely, do Sean Bean's grumbly, like, yeah. But if anyone else, I mean, even if you've read the books, like I can't recommend this highly enough. If you happen to have Audible or if you sign up for a free trial of Audible, at least the first book, I believe, is actually available for free. Um, but yeah, it's great. It's super engaging. I it's one of my favorite things I've kind of consumed in recent memory. So I'm looking forward to getting through about three-quarters of the way through Fellowship right now, and I'm looking forward to getting through the rest of the trilogy.
I did have some random thoughts based on all the stuff you just said, if I may.
Sure.
I can only hope somewhere out there, and this is a very small percentage that is possible, but I can only hope somewhere there's one person who found that audiobook version who is like listening to those and is like, "This guy does a terrible Gollum." Not realizing, of course, right? I can only hope that.
That's
Secondly, you
funny.
mentioned podcasts, and I didn't have anything good to say for my intro other than the stuff, but I have been getting back into the WTF podcast that I think you told me about a long time ago, Joe.
Oh yeah.
I've been specifically listening to some in the more recent episodes. He's had a lot of the Marvel people on, Sebastian Stan and Elizabeth Olsen, Lupita Nyong'o, and some other people, I think. So I have been enjoying those.
Nice. Yeah, Mark Maron is usually a great interviewer. I listened to the Elizabeth Olsen one. I think I have the other two you mentioned downloaded, but haven't gotten around to them yet.
She seems delightful in real life.
Yeah, she seems pretty down to earth and anyway.
Yeah.
Brett not paying attention to Cody's video right now.
What? I Winter Soldier.
Um,
Let's move on.
well,
It's not.
anyway, speaking of all this Tolkien action, our main topic for this week is yet another Tolkien adaptation, which may or may not be as good as the audiobook
The
Fellowship
War of the
Ring.
Rohirrim.
And that doesn't come out until December, I think. We were talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 2 on Amazon Prime Video. Pay Bezos your $150 a year right now, plus an extra $2 a month if you don't want ads because he's not rich enough.
And what the hell? I watch with ads, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
I am one of the suckers who pays the extra $2 a month because I just cannot stand ads in any of my content.
I was not aware that was the fee amount. I will
Yeah.
consider it. I don't watch a ton on Amazon, though, to be honest.
We have been watching a decent amount on Prime, so I mean it's worth it, I think, for us.
I'm trying to think. Well, honestly, for us, it's just like this show and the Wheel of Time, and then beyond that, it might be a random movie here and there. But I'm trying to think if there's any shows we watch on
Yeah, we
there.
don't watch. Well, one of my favorite shows the last several years is back on for its third season.
What's that?
Legend of Vox Machina.
I've
But
heard that's good.
otherwise, I don't watch a lot of series on there either. So
Is that a cartoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I was
Anyway.
on my list somewhere, but all right.
Don't listen to these guys. Prime Video is great. You've got The Marvelous Miss Maisel. You've got Fleabag. That's it. But it's worth it for Fleabag because it is literally one of the greatest TV shows of all time. You know what is also possibly one of the greatest TV shows of all time? The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 2. It's what we're here to
Ooh.
talk about, everybody.
Bold statement. Here we go.
I mean, briefly before we get into talking about season 2, I believe we all reviewed season 1 together. I don't remember what my numeric rating was. I want to say it was like an 8 probably. I think I was maybe the highest on season 1 of this show out of anyone, or certainly up there. Briefly, how did you guys feel about the first season?
I also do not remember a number. I think I would have to give it like a 7 or 6.5, something like that. I for the most part I enjoyed it. I thought it was like not great. Yeah, like there's a lot of parts that weren't done great, but
Yeah,
overall I enjoyed watching it. So yeah, I was looking forward to this season for the most part.
nice.
That sounds familiar. I in my head, it's always very confusing that this show and The Wheel of Time are both Amazon properties, and they're both kind of fantasy wizards, warriors type thing. But I do recall the first season of this was pretty good. I don't think it was stellar, if I recall. And I was actually have the page up here with all of our old episodes, but it was before we wrote down or before I kept track of ratings on them. So pre-Fondies, I don't have a score for us on those, but
Ooh,
I think it was okay. I mean, I was excited enough to jump back into this to see what season two was going to be about.
cool. I mean, I'm kind of sad Justin's not here because he was definitely the coldest on season 1 and
Yeah, I think
has
he grudgingly gave it like a 2.
yeah, he's been, throwing some shade at it in our chat as we've been discussing this season. Um, well, I mean, season 2 obviously picks up where season 1 left off with some hot ring action going down finally.
Woo!
At the end of season 1, we had Hellbrand, who we know is actually Sauron. Sauron. We had Hellbrand, who's actually Sauron, going to the elven city of, oh God, I can't remember what it's called, Eregion,
Yeah.
Yep.
and working along with Celebrimbor. I don't know if you guys know this, but Celebrimbor is the greatest of elven smiths.
I've heard that rumor.
I know no one ever mentioned it on this show, especially in season 2, but Celebrimbor is the greatest of elven smiths.
I'd be pretty pissed if I was that guy and be like, I have like more to me than just that.
Does
But
he though?
I don't
I
know.
mean,
Maybe he
it seems
doesn't.
like he's really into smithing.
Well,
Perhaps
they do.
his last name is Smith.
I don't think elves have last names.
I don't know either.
Maybe they do.
They do
Actually,
kind
I
of
think they
show
do.
towards the end of the season that he apparently was also in charge of the defenses of the city or lack of defenses of the city.
Womp womp.
But
Anyway, I just want to kind of like briefly, because as far as I figure, there are basically 4 main storylines in this season that they kind of cut back and forth between. You've got elves, which includes both the stuff going on at Eregion with Celebrimbor, the greatest of elven smiths, and the artist formerly known as Hellbrand, currently known as Anatar, but always known as Sauron. And we also have the stuff going on with the elves outside of that with Galadriel and Elrond and the
Arondir.
guy who I have to keep reminding myself is not actually a young Liam Neeson, Gil-galad. Then we've got the stuff going on with the dwarves in Khazad-dûm. And then we've got the stuff happening in Numenor, or as I like to call it, the stuff I care the least about. And then we've got the stuff happening with the stranger, or is he? And the Harfoots, Nori and I forget her name.
Poppy.
Poppy. See, I have such
Poppy.
great notes for this.
Puppy.
So I want to just briefly talk about. I mean, let's start with Numenor. Maybe this was my least favorite storyline. I honestly, every time they cut to Numenor, I just wanted them to get back to one of the other plot lines. So this is
Riveting.
Isildur's
the word you're looking
dad.
for.
What's
Oh.
that?
Riveting is the word you're looking for.
So riveting.
You are, yeah. I mean, you're the fact that you're looking up their names does say something. I think, though. I mean,
Yeah,
in my head, you got like Blind Queen
right.
Lady, you
Well,
got
I mean,
Captain of the Guard guy.
yeah. Well, what
That
is his?
Jack Black.
Okay, Elendil. He's the one, yeah, Jack Black. Actually, well, it's funny
Yeah.
because Elendil and Isildur are like super important to
Yeah.
the plot line. I mean, the history of the ring,
Can't
which
you tell?
presumably we're going to get to, but um, yeah. So basically, our Pharazôn, see, I know their names. Jack Black himself, has basically falsely tries to claim the throne after the king dies. Um, which, okay, come on. The scene with the eagle just pissed me off. Nobody else there was like, that eagle doesn't seem too thrilled about this Pharazôn guy.
Yeah. No, the whole city doesn't seem to stand up very strongly
Yeah.
for apparently traditions they've had in place for a long time.
But like basically Pharazôn overthrows the rightful queen and tries to claim the throne, and then she gets locked up. Elendil is all sad about it and faithful to the queen. They decide to do trial by Kraken,
Yeah, sea worm.
and the queen survives that, but for some reason is still not reinstated to the throne, even though the old ways would indicate that that proves her innocence. And like after she survives that, everyone is hailing her as Queen of the Sea. But
She was working with Sauron.
yeah, well, according to some letter, do we even know what that was? Like,
No,
it's like,
it's a bullshit
uh,
document made up. Which PS did the people? I'm trying to remember. Did the human storyline actually even know about Sauron? I guess he was there for a while, so I guess.
first of all, I
But he
think you
wasn't.
mean
Hmm,
Sauron.
he wasn't Sauron at that point, right?
Sauron.
No, you're talking about the big eye from Lord of the Rings. I'm talking about the giant flying lizard from the X-Men.
uh,
Sauron.
anyway, I thought this was all kind of a mess. Also, there's like Isildur is just thinking with his sword and is like the most gullible person on earth. He falls for this hot supposed peasant girl who, at least in the past, has been in league with Sauron. And like that just gets there's just all this crap going down. What did you guys think about all this?
A lot of the characters in that plot annoyed me, which
That's
doesn't bode
fair.
well for the plot line. Like
Mm.
Pharazôn annoyed me. His son, like, is
Oh,
clearly
he's the
like
worst.
the Game of Thrones son type guy here.
Yeah,
Right.
like
Yeah.
Joffrey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joffrey. Yeah, that guy just annoys the hell out of me. But even like the queen and the captain, I'm like, just fucking take your sword and slice somebody's head off, and then you might have somebody listen to you. Like,
Also bone down. Why did those two not bone down?
I don't know, man.
Man,
The
Mm.
all-seeing orb. They were afraid, you know.
that's fair.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. They didn't really do much on this. Then they were like, "You need to leave and lead the people to the captain." And then what's his name? Elendil? No, Elendil.
Elendil, yeah.
So
Elendil.
yeah, it didn't feel like much got accomplished on that particular location this season.
Yeah. I mean, having not like I know very little about the lore outside of the movies, the Peter Jackson movies. So like I've heard the name of like Numenor, and I know it's like it's supposed to mean something, but and so I kept like thinking, well, like something great is going to come out of this, and then like, is it just are we just supposed to get Elendil out of this? Is that like the whole
Well,
deal?
okay,
Like, does anything
so
happen beyond that?
I mean, I guess this is probably a spoiler for the show, but it's literally the first thing that is showed in the Peter Jackson films is a flashback to the history of the ring, in which the last time Sauron brandished it and like rose to power, Isildur was the one who cut the ring off his hand, thus ending that war of the ring. So Isildur becomes like a great hero among men and is the one who like cuts the ring off of Sauron. But at this point, he just kind of seems like a whiny little bitch, and like I just don't care about anything that's going on there.
Right. I mean, I know that bit, but like the city itself, like, does the army do anything later? Is it like,
There are some important things tied to Numenor. One thing which I actually learned from another podcast is that it is apparently supposed to be the case that there were no horses in Middle Earth. and at some point after some stuff goes down, like basically all the horses I think come from Numenor. And at some point, some stuff goes down at Numenor, and they bring the horses to the rest of Middle. That's the other thing. Numenor, I believe, is actually separate from Middle Earth. It's like a continent
Yeah, it looks like it's an
unto its
island.
own.
I'm trying to compare some maps in the background here because that is
Yeah,
a complaint they have about this show. If you're going to use an established property that's so famous, like I need to know where these locations are at that they're talking about compared to pre-established locations
yeah,
because it just seems like they're in like the same world but totally different locations.
yeah. It is well, and that's even. I mean, that carries over. We could talk about in some of the other plot lines, like um, let's talk about maybe dwarves next. I'm kind of trying to think of like in terms of impact on the overall storyline, like least to greatest maybe here. Um, so this season in the dwarves, they get some rings. Durin the third gets ring crazy and starts digging too greedily and too deep. Um, well, actually, I guess before that, there's like a some sort of earthquake or something that leads to all of their late shafts being closed off.
Heyo, not a metaphor, people.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, those aftershocks of the of mountain, the Mount
Oh yeah,
Doom.
more yeah,
Yeah.
Mount Doom. Yes. Um, so in the aftermath of that, they're trying to figure out how to get light back into their little world and end up taking a gift of some rings. And who would have guessed that that would lead to bad things happening? So throughout the season, we've got this growing tension between Durin the Fourth, Prince Durin, and his father Durin the Third, the king, and kind of culminates in, well, I mean, it culminates in one of the greatest moments in TV history. Let's not be shy about that. But um, how did you guys feel about this kind of throughout the course of the season, though, especially the kind of back and forth tension between the Durins and the relationship with King Durin kind of being increasingly under the control of the ring?
Brett, you want to take that one first?
I could, yeah. So I think for me the dwarves storyline continues to be the most uh the most enjoyable, entertaining storyline out of them so far. It, the characters have the most like I feel like they have like more depth to them than a lot of the other ones. They um I actually like care about a lot of these characters a bit more. They're they're fun to watch. There's some humor there. There's some heart as well, and um, yeah, just the nature of the dwarves. They're just kind of more charismatic and just fun, just in general. But um, yeah, I enjoyed the struggle, and I feel like that was done pretty well. It was really pretty believable. Like this kind of slow descent into Durin the Third's kind of like madness from the ring.
Yeah.
Um, and the growing tension and everything in there. I enjoyed it. I did have some issues at the end, but
Well, we can get to that in
we
a
can get to
second.
that. Yeah.
I'm actually gonna agree as far as like finding this entertaining and also like engaging. I think a big part of that is really the performances. I think like the three actors who play both Durins and then Disa, Durin the Third's wife, like I feel like they all have good chemistry together, especially Prince Durin and Disa. Like you believe that these people have been married for a long time and that they
Yeah.
have this deep, love and connection with each other.
Hatred for love and yeah, love and connection. Go ahead, yeah.
Um, but then also like between Prince Durin and King Durin, I mean, I feel like I believe that relationship, you can feel that Prince Durin is kind of pained when his father shuns him because of what this ring is doing. So it feels like there's more humanity in this storyline than there is really in any of the others. Uh, Cody, you're making a face. What's going on?
Ah,
Dwarf Manity?
I don't know. I liked Disa a lot in this season, and I guess the prince for the most part as well. The dad kind of annoyed me though. The king, just kind of like the plot in Numenor. It was just like, hey, did you know the Dwarf King has this ring on his finger and he should take it off? Dad, you should take off that ring on your finger. Did you guys all know that he has this ring on his finger and it's bad and it's gonna really hurt the dwarves overall? I mean, I know they kept showing like the powers it could do and the advantages it was giving them of like the light shafts and finding the right spots to hit, but it just felt like, I don't know, not a lot was changing in the mines, and there's a lot of scenes in the mines, up to the very end part, maybe where Brett's referencing when something new kind of does happen.
Yeah.
Like which is a shame for me because I do feel like those are two of my favorite characters on this show, and it just didn't feel like they were doing a lot. Honestly, like one of the most significant moments for the dwarves I felt like this season was when they didn't even show up during the big fight at the end, and I was like, ooh, okay, like that kind of made sense. That's what I thought the choice he was going to make, but like now it has impact on somebody else. So
Listen, the dwarves will come.
Not at first light.
Precisely at first light.
Right?
Oh,
Gandalf on his horse, they are not.
Well, let's talk about the big thing that happens at the end of the season with the dwarves.
Yeah.
King Durin digs too greedily and too deep and awakens a beast that has been sleeping in the mountain, the Balrog. I believe
the boxer from Street Fighter,
henceforth known as Durin's Bane. Which, I mean, unless stuff gets really weird and they really change some things, this is also the same Balrog that Gandalf would later fight in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I was wondering if it would be the same or if it's more than one.
There were, I forget how many. There were several different Balrogs, like in the olden days, but this would have been the same one that Gandalf later fought.
It makes sense because in the movies that's where they are when he fights them. So.
Exactly. Yeah. What did you guys think about this sequence? This was the opening sequence of the season finale.
I thought the Balrog looked amazing.
Oh, it looked amazing. Incredible.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts visually by far in the season. And the way that King Durin like goes out was really, really fucking epic. Like that was pretty awesome seeing there. It did leave me with several questions though.
That's fair.
Yeah.
What about you, Cody?
I mean, the actual moment with the Balrog was pretty awesome. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a bigger chunk of this season's story for how early in the season they were like, there's a creature down there and we can't dig down below. And Disa's like frying up her roasted almonds. And she's like, hey, there's a monster down below. We can't have them go any deeper. But that scene also to me is like a bit of a problem because it's like he did.
I know there should have been some heavy metal music playing behind it.
Oh, that would have been better. Maybe like the closing credits of episode 7 or whatever that was when it was jamming out with the lead singer from Meshuggah. But that's a whole nother thing there. But anyway, there was like the moment when he finally takes the ring off, and I'm like, wait, what? We couldn't get him to take the ring off for the whole fucking season, and then he just like, oh, here's this big creature, take the ring off, here you go, Prince.
I agree. Yeah. Well, it's his motive for doing it felt weird because earlier, like his son literally begged him to take the ring off, and he's like, dwarves don't beg. And so like he won't do it for his son, but then the Balrog shows up and he's like, maybe I should take the ring off now.
The kid even just had like a moment or like an extended moment of him like coming back to his senses, like seeing what he has wrought and being like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. They just like cut to him taking it off and be like, well, it's yours now.
I feel, I mean, I think
So
I read it as, or I think they probably want us to read it as him realizing what he's done and kind of realizing that there's no going back, but then wanting to go out on his own terms and, like not wanting to like proving to himself, I think, more than anyone else that he can take the ring off,
Hmm.
it
at
seemed
least in
like
his final moments. But
in character though from this season, he would have been like, I can still defeat this creature with the power of this ring, and like would have jumped into it with the ring. Because
Right.
that's like all he was about was all
Yeah.
this extra power of the mountain that it was giving him. But then he's like, "Whoop! Impossibly
well,
tough creature, throw ring."
I mean, I agree, but I do think I do think his son was at least part of the impetus for him taking the ring off, especially like because there's that like collapse, and for a second it seems like he thinks that his son may have been like killed or at least injured. Like I feel like there's some moment of recognition of, because then it seems like he's trying to have a brief moment of reconnection with Prince Durin before he leaps epically at the Balrog with his axe. I mean, it was not
Yeah.
portrayed well. I think it definitely,
Yes.
his mindset and motivation in that moment definitely could have been made a little bit more explicit.
I feel like all we know from this series on film is that the longer you have the ring on, the more you're under its control, like the less likely you are to suddenly break out of it and take it off and be like,
Mm.
voluntarily, here's this ring. So I just seemed out of character for him in that moment. He literally sent guards to like kill his son and daughter-in-law because they were blocking a passage earlier in the show. So it's
That's true.
it's not like he's
Yeah.
like, oh, my son's in danger because I tried to kill him earlier.
That's
Mm.
true. But hey, at least we got this awesome shot of him leaping at the Balrog.
And at
That's
least the
true.
Balrog's dead now. Oh wait.
It's totally dead. He killed it with his
Wait,
axe.
we don't know what happened to it.
Maybe Durin's alive.
Listen, I'm gonna buy a bitchin' 1980s full-size van and have this painted on the side of it.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be cool.
I can't take credit for that. I heard someone float that idea on another podcast already.
There's going to be a sequel trilogy past the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's going to have Durin come out of the mountain still,
Oh,
looking haggard as fuck, but just like metal.
okay. What if Durin becomes the new Balrog,
Ooh, it
and he's
fuses.
the one who fights Gandalf?
Ooh,
My God.
yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, any other thoughts on dwarves?
Uh, no.
I guess the thought I was about to say that we can talk about that in the when we talk about the
The
elves.
elves. All
Yeah.
right. Do you want to talk about elves next, or strangers and Harfoots?
Hmm. Let's do the strangers.
Let's do the stranger because I feel like that's the
Self-contained mostly.
yeah, it's pretty self-contained. So we've got strangers and Harfoots. They're trying to find their way to Rune because mystical reasons. The stranger seems to think that he's supposed to like find a staff for himself and maybe also figure out who he is. Um,
Oh, we know who he is.
we know who he is. Along the way, they meet some other Hobbit predecessors called the Stewars, who have
That was
settled.
actually a pretty good voice. I don't know if you
What?
did that on purpose or not, but that was actually a pretty good voice of pronunciation.
The Stewars?
Yeah, but you said it like the way they talk.
The Stewars? I don't know. Now I
Yeah.
can't do it. Anyway, unlike the Harfoots, who are nomadic people, the Stewars have settled into the desert and built up a little town for themselves. And they're kind of they seem pretty. It's not ideal, but it's their home. Seems to be the general vibe. They're just glad to kind of have a place to call their own, and it's a concept that is kind of foreign to our little Harfoots. Although we go on to learn that, hey, maybe they have some common ancestry because there was God, what's the name of the guy?
Oh, geez, I can't remember.
Burroughs, something Burroughs.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
There was a Burroughs who was like an ancestor to the Stewarts as well, and he had mentioned wanting to like find a place for everyone to settle down. Spoiler alert, it's going to be the Shire eventually.
Interesting.
But
It's that word. The word stewards.
yeah,
You can't pronounce it their way without getting their accent. That's amazing.
it's weird.
How'd they do that? I'm actually kind of blown away by that.
Sauron.
New York. Interesting, boss. Interesting.
Anyway, elsewhere though, the Harfoots and the Stranger have become separated. The Stranger ends up running into a peculiar person out in the middle of nowhere.
Uh-oh, here we go.
A
Joe's on the clock for his rant, and go.
bearded man by the name of Tom Bombadil.
Young Hagrid.
Oh no, my thing's not working.
Yeah, right. Young Hagrid indeed.
Very old, darling, like goes where the wind and the feathers starling down along on the hill, shining in the sunlight, waiting on the doorstep for the cold starlight. There, my pretty lady is River Woman's daughter.
So that's Andy Serkis as Tom Bombadil in the book. And Tom Bombadil is like that all the time. He sings like everything, and he is a goddamn maniac in the books. He is way toned down in the show.
Really?
He kind of like speaks in verse in the show, at least a significant portion of the time. But man, it is a very different portrayal of the character. What did you? I mean, so am I correct in assuming that neither of you has read the books, or have you?
I haven't. I only know the name, really. I don't know anything about the character.
Yeah, I've never read the
I honestly,
trilogy.
I had a small amount of, I assumed he was like some sort of hobbit. I don't know why I believe that, but I thought he was a hobbit.
I didn't know anything about him other than, yeah, like you said, I think he's maybe like name dropped here or there. He might be name dropped in the Hobbit book. I'm not positive, but
He is.
okay.
Yeah,
That I've read several times, but I've never read.
Well, he's also. I mean, he also has been. He's mentioned in a lot of discussion around like adaptations of Tolkien. He's not at all in the Peter Jackson films, with probably good reason. But what did you guys think of? I mean, not really having any other experience with the character. What did you think of him in this series? Like, I guess, how did you feel about him as a character and kind of what his purpose to the plot was?
I kind of liked the character, I guess, in general. He felt very like mysterious and like it's a stereotypical like old wise wizard who doesn't tell you everything and like kind of lets you find your own way. Like, I mean, that feels like it's been done several times in other various media, since this. But I overall enjoyed the character. I thought he was acted well, and those scenes were pretty fun generally.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't know what to expect of that character, but I thought he was just kind of a fun, like, weird guide and mentor who was, pushing you to do what you needed to do without telling you what you needed to do to get you to do what you needed to do. So, but well, like Brett said, that's been done in some media before, but I thought it was a fun character, not knowing who the character was. Like Brett, I didn't know who the name was, just a name, that's it. So, Joe, you seemed like you had a lot of thoughts about it, though.
He is garbage. It is trash. This is terrible. No, I'm conflicted. I agree. I actually like the actor. I think it's a good performance. I think he is an interesting addition to the show, but it's weird, like, now being familiar with how he's portrayed in the book, because in the show he's basically Yoda. Like you said, he's kind of like the
That's a good
mysterious old wizard character who maybe speaks a little, in riddles, but
yeah,
ultimately guides the hero toward where he needs to go. In the book, he is possibly God. At the very least, he seems to be some sort of godlike figure. He is, I mean, they say in the show like he's eldest, like he was here before everything.
Hmm.
But in the book, you basically get the sense that like he is so powerful and has been around so long that he can't even be bothered with like any of the Sauron shit or the ring that's going on. Like he's just this like merry dude who like lives in a cabin with his wife who is some sort of also magical creature named Goldberry. And he's just content to kind of bounce around and sing and sit by his fire and eat bread and honey. And like he takes the hobbits in and is like super kind to them and feeds them and whatnot and like helps them out a little bit, but he really does not go out of his way to like offer any guidance or anything. It really feels like the rest of the world is kind of like ants to him or something. Like
Hmm.
there's actually in the book during the Council of Elrond scene where they're like trying to figure out what to do with the ring. I think it's Elrond. Someone actually brings up the idea of, hey, let's call Tom Bombadil because he's super powerful and could probably deal with this. And Gandalf says basically that Tom Bombadil likely would not understand the importance of such a request. And even if he did and he were given the ring, well, that's the other thing. In the book, Tom Bombadil actually takes the ring from Frodo and puts it on, and like nothing happens to him. And it's clear that the ring has like no power over him whatsoever.
Oh wow.
But like in the Council of Elrond scene, Gandalf says, you know, if you gave Tom Bombadil the ring, he would probably forget about it or even just throw it away. Like it's just like none of this matters to him. He's just like so like unconcerned with, you know, the problems of the other races in Middle Earth. So he feels pretty different. I mean, and also he literally is singing like all the goddamn time. Like he is a truly unhinged character.
I mean, the show does give you a sense that he's something almost outside the world, even though he's
Yeah,
here,
yeah, I mean there it does. I mean there's definitely there's some like God imagery with like the lamb that he has. And I
Mm.
mean again, he does say in the show that he is eldest and that he was here like before the trees and before everything else.
I think there's isn't there a couple times where he like just disappears when he's like next to Gandalf and stuff too.
Yeah, I think so.
It seems like he can just do whatever he wants. Actually, I was kind of surprised because wasn't there a scene where trying to remember now, wasn't there a scene where like somebody else came to his house besides Gandalf?
Well, there's
Am
a
I,
scene where you can hear his wife Goldberry, but you don't actually see her.
I
Like you
thought there
hear
was
him
a
having a
scene when
conversation
like
with
two
her.
soldiers came to his house. Am I wrong on this? Maybe I'm wrong on this.
I think that yeah, there was some sort of
Yeah,
flashback like that. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't really remember what happened there,
Which
but
I think it was kind of like I was just surprised because his house is like, making it through the Lost Woods in Zelda or something. It's just like
yeah.
you can't get there, but apparently several people made it there in this season, so I don't know.
um anyway, interesting character. I mean, my from reading the books, like the other thing is he plays a huge, well, I guess I shouldn't say huge. He plays a pretty big role in the Fellowship of the Ring. Like he's just in the book a lot more than I would have guessed. So it's kind of weird to me that Peter Jackson left him out of the movie, but also I understand why he did because
It's already 4 hours
it
long.
would have really well that and like tonally, especially given the tone of the movies, it would have felt really weird to have this, you know, bouncing, singing maniac just there. But all that said, I do like the actor who plays him. I think it's a pretty good portrayal. It just doesn't quite feel like the Tom Bombadil who lives in my heart. Um, but anyway, ultimately in this storyline, Tom Bombadil kind of helps the stranger realize that he needs to go save the Harfoots because friendship and caring about people is what's important. As a result of that, though, he ends up getting the staff that he had kind of set out to find.
Yeah, he does.
He also gets a name.
Oh, Lord, here we go.
He's a grand elf. You guys, he's a grand elf. The stranger is an elf who is grand. He's a grand elf.
Everybody had to be thinking the same thing as me at this moment, right?
I had a strong instant thought, but what was
It's the same one.
Solo? No?
It's not the same one.
Oh, what were you thinking?
Brett?
I just exhaled very loudly.
Oh, okay.
What were you thinking, Cody?
I was assuming he got the nickname or the
Hodor?
name, yeah, because of Hodor, but
Hold the door.
yeah.
That's fair.
As soon as they started, first person said Grand Elf, I was like, oh, Jesus.
Mm.
We're gonna do
Which
this
way? Okay.
again.
Honestly, as much as my knee-jerk reaction was to want to punch something when they said that, I would have been willing to accept it if it was something where, like, over time, like, if people called him the Grand Elf in this time period, and then, like, over millennia, it just degrades into Gandalf.
Yeah.
Right.
But when he's talking to Tom Bombadil and he's just randomly like, that's what they're going to call me, isn't it? Gandalf.
Yeah.
How did you get from Grand Elf to Gandalf? Like what?
They weren't calling that before. How are they going to call it that after? I don't know.
Yeah, like what? So that kind of pissed me off.
That's funny.
I
I hope in the next season he's like, call me Gandalf, and they're like, that kind of sounds like Grandalf. Wait, did you just mishear us? Or
I thought I heard the stewards calling you Grand Elf.
the stewards?
The stewards.
What about just the fact that he is Gandalf?
Yeah, we should probably mention that, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew that was going to happen, like from the first time he showed up on
suspicions, yes.
I think season 1 I thought did a decent job at first of kind of, I mean, I thought there was a chance he could have been Saruman. I thought there was a slim chance I thought he could have been Sauron at the very beginning, but those would have been,
I mean, I think they really
a little more
wanted
unpredictable.
Yeah, I think they wanted you to think that, especially like early in season 1. I think they wanted you to kind of feel like anyone could be Sauron.
Yeah.
Sauron.
Well, he wasn't the Grand Elf then, so.
Yeah, I do. I do think, especially early in season 1, there's a little bit more of a mystery, but I feel like by the end of season 1, I was pretty sure it was Gandalf. And like, if they had not confirmed that one way or the other by the end of this season, I would have just been even angrier. So I'm glad that they at least answered that question. I mean, a lot of other Tolkien nerds are angry because this throws off the timeline for everything, but this show kind of does that in general anyway. Like, canonically, Gandalf doesn't really come to Middle-earth until the Third Age, which is, like, in the future. What was that, Cody?
Does he take the name Gandalf because he's not even an elf? Is that part of it?
No, it has nothing to do with the Grand Elf thing, or, like,
I'm just saying, like, in his character, like, is he, like, they're calling me Grand Elf, but, like, I'm not even an elf.
You mean in the series?
Yeah, the series.
I don't know. I wish we had any idea how he jumped to that conclusion.
Interesting.
Like, and the way he says it, it's like it makes it sound like they're already like people are already calling him that. It's like no.
Right.
He's trying to make it happen like fast.
Yeah,
he's like
he's
Gandalf. I go by Gandalf now. Thanks, Gandalf. No one's calling you Gandalf. Gandalf.
Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Well, I guess just really like the fact that this character now is Gandalf. I was not pleased with that. Like almost immediately, I was like, I love this character. I kind of do want to see more of Gandalf in the history, but I at the same time felt like it was just like super fan service. Like, anyone who knows anything about Lord of the Rings is going to want to see Gandalf, so let's slap him in here, even though it doesn't make sense. I think I would have been a lot happier if it had been one of the other two Istar that we know nothing about.
Well, speaking of, how do we feel about the Dark Wizard?
I mean, I don't know I don't know enough about Saruman's
the
character to know whether or not that makes sense.
the very, very
But
heavily Saruman coded Dark Wizard.
I mean, it's got to be him, right? Well, no, that doesn't make sense
I
either because
don't think
he's an
so.
Istar.
I don't think so.
That can't be him. Yeah, it's
Well,
got
the
to be
Dark
somebody
Wizard
else who just looks like him.
Well, the Dark Wizard is an Istar.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, he does say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
You're right.
okay.
Yep. Okay.
So there are 5 Istar. There's Gandalf, Saruman, Radagast, and then the 2 blue wizards, who we don't really know anything about. So
Ain't nobody know those people.
I'm hoping that the Dark Wizard is one of the 2 blue wizards because they like went to the east and like were never really heard of again. But it feels like they at least try to make him look like Saruman.
Big time.
He calls Gandalf old friend. Like they wanted you to feel like there's like a history there, which I mean there would have been. Like Gandalf in this storyline has amnesia, so he just doesn't remember his past. But like being 2 of the Istar, they would have had some sort of history presumably. This is one where like I'm willing to accept the Gandalf thing, even if it muddles the timeline a bit. I don't think I could accept this being Saruman, especially since Saruman is not really outed as being evil until the events of the Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yeah, he's supposed to be a good guy.
Yeah, like he's actually the leader of the Istar. Like he's like the leader of Gandalf's order, he describes him as. He's known as like Saruman the Wise, and he's, when this stuff is going down during the Council of Elrond, Gandalf talks about how he tried to seek counsel from Saruman, but was taken prisoner by him instead.
Yeah, I mean, visually and audibly they tried to make this character look like Saruman for sure. I did also think it was well set up in that this guy in the show was running like basically like a mercenary cabal to like further his own machinations, but he claimed to and seemed to genuinely be still against Sauron's forces, or just the idea of Sauron in general. Like he was like, we need to beat him down now, and I'm going to do what I need to do, which does kind of also line up with the trilogy, the original trilogy, right? Where he's like, we can't defeat him; he's too strong. We must join with him. So it seems like they're heavily implying that that's who this is. I don't know. If it's anybody else, they shouldn't have / wouldn't have picked somebody that looks so spot on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to believe it's a red herring. Like I feel like having it be both Gandalf and Saruman, like it just feels like, I mean, there's already too much like heavy winking and fan service in the rest of this season anyway. Like,
do we know? And I apologize if I'm just forgetting this from like season 1, but now that we know like basically who Gandalf is, do we know why he originally crashed to Earth in season 1 to begin with? Or like why he's there as is? Like why does he have amnesia? Why did he end up there?
we don't know any of that. I mean, I don't think the amnesia thing, I don't think is based on the books at all. I think that's like something they just made up for the show.
Like I almost got the impression when he was talking to this Dark Wizard that the Dark Wizard was kind of like, oh, now that we found you after you like went away, like it almost seemed like this guy somehow orchestrated Gandalf, like I don't know, being shot through the sky and like landing somewhere to kill him, but it like only gave him amnesia, and now he's like, oh, we found you, thank goodness, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we really know anything. I mean, that's the thing. Like, even though we know this is Gandalf, like we don't really know. And I mean, I guess that is one of the complications of the show playing with the timeline like this, is because it's a character we know, but because they presented him in a way that is not from the original text, like we really don't know what the background of this specific version of Gandalf is.
Yeah, right.
I will say, I mean, part of the reason I'm willing to accept this as Gandalf and like I'm not too mad about it is I feel like it does kind of, I mean, especially if you like read the book, like I think it kind of adds a little bit to some of the events of like the discussion of Tom Bombadil at the Council of Elrond, where it feels like Gandalf is like very familiar with him, and like I think at the end of Return of the King, Gandalf actually says something about how before he joins the elves in the Undying Lands, he wants to go stop and visit Tom Bombadil again. So like in the books, it's clear that they have had a prior relationship. So I kind of like that the show introduces them and like establishes that they have, some history there. Um, I mean, also in the books, Gandalf has a strong fondness for hobbits, so maybe his time with the Harfoots and possibly
Stewards.
is kind of planting a seed for that. He has presumably millennia of, experience with the hobbitses and their ancestors. So in some ways, I feel like the things the show created, can be seen as additive and kind of enhancing the greater storyline, but other things are a little murkier.
Hmm.
Anyway, any other thoughts about that storyline?
I don't think so. It's interesting. I thought it was interesting that he got his staff from like the ruins of the like encampment where the people lived. It was like, oh, your home's destroyed. I'll just pick up this one random branch and there it is. There's my staff.
I mean,
It'll always remind all of you half-foots of the home that you lost.
oh, wow. Let's talk about elves.
All right.
There's so much elven stuff that happens that I'm not even gonna really try to go through it all. But
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
like half the screen time, I would say.
yeah, well, because there's also crap, I forgot what I was gonna say. Well, there's also there's like all the stuff going on with God, what the crap is the name of the city again?
Oh,
Region?
yeah.
Eregion. There's like
Yeah.
all the Eregion stuff,
Yep.
but then outside of Eregia, there's also the stuff with Adar and the orcs, and we learn Adar is actually an elf, and like all the stuff. Are Adar and Galadriel gonna get it on? Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think the kind of important points are um, Sauron is continuing to force Celebrimbor, the greatest of all elven smiths,
He is the greatest.
to make some more rings. Meanwhile, well, actually, I mean, going all the way back to the very beginning of the season, it actually starts with what I thought was a pretty cool flashback of Sauron coming to Adar and the orcs and being like, hey, Morgoth is dead, which Morgoth was basically the greater evil before Sauron. Sauron was like his second in command, basically. But him coming to Adar and being like, hey, Morgoth is dead. I'm in charge now. Follow me. And then Adar murdering the shit out of him with his own crown.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think about that whole sequence?
Yeah. I liked that actually.
I thought it was pretty cool too.
I was mega confused that it was a different actor.
Yeah, that threw me off too. Like honestly, well, I knew that Sauron was going to be taking an elven form this season, but I had heard that it was going to be the same actor who played him as Hellbrand. And at the beginning, I was like, huh, he really looks different. Like I didn't even realize that it was a different actor because I was like already expecting him to appear in elf form. But yeah, it was a completely different actor then plays him as Anatar later on. So it was kind of weird. But I thought it was a cool sequence anyway.
Sequence I think I liked, yeah. Yeah. Once I figured out what was going on, then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's all right. I could get behind that. That's all right.
Yeah. But I mean, super long story short, Adar is trying to kill Sauron again now that he knows he's around. The elves, for the most part, are also trying to kill Sauron. Celebrimbor, the greatest of elven smiths, is at first trying to help Anatar because Sauron has convinced him that he's actually this like higher being, like the Lord of Gifts or something, and is, his gift is trying to help Celebrimbor create these great works in the rings.
Yeah, he was all like, "I'm Tom
Um,
Bombadil,"
nah,
and they believed him.
but by the end of the season, Celebrimbor kind of finally wakes up and gets killed, and Sauron convinces the orcs to turn on Adar, and he gets killed. And Sauron has orcs now, and he has several of the rings.
Yeah, I'd have to sit down and sketch out who has what rings already at this point, which is part of the
Mm.
problem when you have a show with so many fucking
Yeah.
rings.
Well, I think he has
Did you get the
the.
9 at the
I
end?
think he has the 9 at the end.
Okay.
Mm.
I don't think he has any of the elven rings.
No, because they just have the 3, right? Which were all.
They have the 3. He wouldn't have the dwarven, so I think he just has the 9.
I think they were all
Sounds
there.
right.
Galadriel had one, and Elrond had one. Did the other guy have one too?
What's his fuck? Here, Círdan. Remember early in the season, the guy who lives on the West Haven. I think they give him one of the rings.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
accurate.
so they had 2. Okay, yeah, so it probably just
So
has
Gil Galad has one. Yeah, Gil Galad has one. Galadriel has one, and then Círdan has the third one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think at the end Sauron has the 9, and he also has Celebrimbor's smithing hammer that it looks like he might be having some notions of putting to use.
Mini Mjolnir.
Yeah, I mean, what could he possibly be using that for?
that I admit that was confusing because we were watching this and we watched like episode 1 maybe like right when it came out, and then we like fell way behind on this show, and we honestly couldn't remember if they started the crafting with the One Ring or if that was like not something that was made yet. And
It has not been made yet.
I was like, no, I think it's already been made. I think that was the end of the first season. And then he's like making these rings to like have power over people. But okay.
So, I mean, it's spoiler alert. And I mean, this is like, again, from The Lord of the Rings, so it's not really a spoiler. Um, Canonically, the 3 elven rings, I mean, they discussed it in the show too, but Sauron never touched the 3 elven rings, which is a point that is like repeated in the book as well. Although the book makes it feel like they're even more free from his influence than the show, because the show
Hmm.
kind of feels like even though he didn't directly like touch any of the metal used for them or anything, that his influence still at least somewhat seeped into them. Um, in the book, it feels like there's even more separation there.
Okay.
Um, and then the Elven Ring, or the Dwarven Rings, I should say, obviously he was directly involved in, as well as the 9. But the One Ring he will make himself in secret. So the idea is that he gifts these rings to the different races, but none of them know that he makes this other ring for himself that has power over the rest of them.
So I was a little confused by this point as well because Sauron, basically continues to say through
Sauron.
the show that he's like learning all these techniques from Celebrimbor and all of these things and like the right materials and like how to specially forge these things using the world's greatest dwarven blacksmith. But he like seems to be unable to do it himself at any point, so now he's just gonna be able to craft the greatest ring of all by himself. Is that what's like? It almost seemed like there was like a barrier where he couldn't actually make them. And he had to use Celebrimbor to make all of these rings. I mean, even at the end when the 9 were like on the rods and he was like basically just needing to tamp and add the gems to them, still at that point, even Sauron was like, I can't do it. You need to do these rings. So it's weird that like they're setting him up to be like a semi-inept smith, but also he's going to craft this greatest ring of all time. That's weird. I don't know.
That seems fair.
That is a good question. And I wish I had an answer for that.
Okay.
I'm trying to quickly Google to try to find an answer for that, but okay, so Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So apparently, like in the books, Sauron's original plan was basically to. He originally was not going to have rings for dwarves or men. He was basically just going to use Celebrimbor to make rings for the elves. So that way, like by having Celebrimbor, the greatest of all elven smiths, do it,
He is great.
it's less suspicious, than like, hey, I'm this random guy who's definitely not Sauron. Take these rings from me. Um, by having Celebrimbor do it, the elves would take them because the elves are the most powerful of the races in Middle Earth besides Sauron. So he saw them as basically the greatest threat. But he ended up pivoting his plan, I think, once questions started being asked. I don't know.
So he still can't make them himself.
I don't know about that.
Okay, fair enough. We'll find out.
Well, I will say, I mean, this is an answer to your question, but one thing I liked about this season in its portrayal of Sauron, I like that you see him as like you see the ways that he like manipulates and uses people. I think even more in this season than in season one. Like I feel like at least to a certain extent, it's like he doesn't really lie to people. He just kind of like deflects until they arrive at whatever conclusion he wants them to arrive at. But it's like he's not really like directly, telling people what to do or overtly telling lies. He's just like very kind of sneakily, getting them to arrive at the conclusions and decisions that he kind of wants them to. And I like the way that that's portrayed in this season.
Yeah, they frequently call him the deceiver in this
Yeah.
season, and that's the case. But when he's like creating like a whole world around you that you can't tell is not real, I mean that's like basically lying to you and
Right.
telling you
Yeah,
what
I
you can
mean,
do.
that's true. There's a line.
I was trying to figure out that part with the mouse. The first couple times they showed that part with the mouse, like running the circles on the floor,
Yeah.
because it would like stop and like put its front legs up at that one point, and then it would like redo the loop. And I didn't get what they were going for with like it being a time loop. I thought they were saying there was like an invisible thing that the mouse was like standing on because of the. Well, there was that scene in the season where there was like the ring of invisibility that like was never touched upon again, or was that? Yeah, no. What ring was that? When the one I'm talking about, the blonde girl put it on? The blonde
Oh,
elf?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And she
yeah,
was in
yeah.
like the other world, right?
Yeah, the one who had the hots for Sauron.
Which was basically like the one of the powers of the One Ring.
Yeah,
And
yes.
then he was like, "Oh, we didn't do the formula right." And then like that plot point was like just brushed over after that. But I was like, that's like the whole crux of what they use the One Ring for in the movies, even if it's not like its sole power, but that's kind
Yeah,
of what you associate it with.
that is an interesting point.
Did
Yeah, I
that
forgot
ring
about that.
disappear, or did they actually reforge that into one of the other rings? I wasn't sure.
I was trying to remember if when that happened that they were still finishing the dwarf rings or if that was after that and they were working on the human rings. I think it was the human ones, but I don't remember.
I think it was the human ones as well. Yeah, I don't remember what really happened to that ring though. But R.I.P. that blonde girl.
R.I.P. the blonde girl.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
I'm sure
All
the elves
right.
could have done nothing to help her at all.
No, they can't.
No.
Nope.
Mm.
Can't do that.
Man, for how wise and ancient and magical the elves are, they sure kind of are dumb in the show.
There are.
I mean, honestly, right? And they were like the best hope against Sauron. It's like, no wonder this guy took over the world. Like,
Yeah.
well, do you want to mention the giant fight scene that took like 3 episodes?
Oh boy.
The Siege of the Town, classic Lord of the Rings battle style, which
The Siege of Region.
was amazing because all of the Lord of the Rings giant battle scenes are always amazing.
That was pretty good. I mean, talk about it.
Well, it's just cool. I mean, a lot of different things that we hadn't seen before. The devices that came and like smashed through the wall to pull it down, or they like definitely made way more use of like trebuchets and catapults in this than they did in like the later timeline movies. So they must have gave up on the lost art of just burning the city to the ground without having to lose a single troop. That seemed like a really good strategy.
It's true.
And one giant troll.
There's the troll.
Yeah.
Man, what R.I.P. Elrond's horse.
Oh. Yeah.
That made me very sad, but I appreciated the extent to which he killed the shit out of the orc that did that. Although you're supposed to never make war in anger, apparently.
Did it seem to anybody else like the elves were not really prepared for a fight? Which I guess if it had been peaceful for a long time, maybe they weren't prepared for a fight, but like their discipline and everything they were supposed to have, as soon as the shit started hitting fan, they were like, whoa, running around like, where should we stand on this wall and who should we fire at? While simultaneously losing like their entire ranks at the beginning of that siege, but somehow having enough ranks left to last through like multiple days of the fight going on. Also a classic Lord of the Rings format.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there was some confusion. I mean, it seems like they had a lot of concerns already with the whole Anatar, Sauron, Celebrimbor situation. Like, I don't know if they were really ready to fight because they're trying to figure out what the fuck is going on there and who they're supposed to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
When we started getting like actual like action and battle scenes this season, there was probably like the episode maybe like 6.5 or something. It was like somewhere in there. Like my first thought was, hey, these are pretty cool. Like it feels a lot like some of the action in the movies. You know, it feels pretty epic. There's a lot, some cool stuff going on here. But by the end, like a lot of these action scenes produced many of the overall issues I had the show, which was unfortunate. Like what you were just mentioning, like the elves just didn't seem like very capable fighters during that siege. They like were not doing a very good job. One of my favorite, one of the worst parts, the one I laughed about the most though, was like that siege engine, which was pretty cool. It just had like a kind of unique design of like burrowing into the wall and then like tearing the wall out. The elves did absolutely nothing to try and stop that from happening the entire time.
Yeah.
It's like right below them on the wall, and they're like, I guess it's just gonna happen. Let's shoot at something out there 100 yards away. We couldn't possibly shoot at the orcs that are manning this machine.
Right.
We couldn't possibly go down there and stop them. We couldn't like throw things at them. They just like let it happen the entire time. I was just baffled.
While simultaneously being like, that's the thinnest part of the wall.
Right. Yeah, they mentioned that like I think multiple times, and then they just do nothing to defend it.
Which PS did I miss? Like what? They shot that one arrow, the flaming arrow, and like that one duct coming out of the like wall. Was that like the oil pipeline they had going in, or what was?
I think it was like an oil barrel on the siege machine.
Oh,
I don't think it wasn't like part of the wall or anything. I think it was on the machine.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I thought they like shot the like gas pipeline in the wall, and I was like, wait, what the fuck are they running for power in this place? Like, what's happening here? Interesting.
I don't know if you know this, but in Numenor they have aqueducts so they can have water in their homes.
Well, yeah, you know who doesn't? The not the Moors. What are their names?
The Stewards.
Stewards don't have them. Stewards don't have them. They don't have any water at all. Great fight though.
Let me ask you guys a very important question related to this whole storyline.
Yeah.
How did you feel about hold on. Make sure I get this right.
Okay.
Yes, Glug. How did you feel about Glug?
Oh man, the smartest of the orcs.
Hashtag justice for Glug.
Uh,
The orc who has a family and feelings.
Was
so
he the one that had the baby earlier?
He was the one who had a baby earlier.
wait, what? Seriously?
Presumably, yeah. There's
There's
a
a baby orc
random
on
scene
screen.
where he's got
Oh.
like an orc wife and child, which in retrospect I would assume is only there because they want us to be sad when he gets murdered in this episode in the finale.
I actually saw a few websites talking about Glug, and I didn't know who the hell Glug was. I just saw like 5 seconds before you said it, so that's funny.
Yeah, he's
Um,
the orc with the family
which
who
PS the like creatures in
Sauron
this
murders.
definitely can speak better English than the creatures can later on. That's for sure. They have the Urukai in the later movies and stuff. I feel like it's always like translated in guttural noises, and these people are just like, "Would you like some tea since we're raiding your village?"
I mean, it is like thousands of years later. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
I kind of just the fact that they are making an effort to kind of humanize the orcs in this show. My initial thought was I don't like it because like they're supposed to be just like kind of almost mindless, just killing machines, and now you're telling me that they're like this misunderstood, like somewhat good creatures, but is like the point I just made about it being like much earlier in the timeline. It certainly gives them room to say, "Oh, Sauron corrupted them into
Yeah.
something much worse down
They
the
were
road."
literally created by Morgoth to serve him. So if
They
you're looking at the canon, there really is no reason to think that they were like ever sympathetic characters.
Mm. Yeah, so it does seem a little bit weird overall. I don't know why it's there, I guess. Like you say, except that we then feel somewhat bad about him in that scene. But yeah, overall, I don't see making the orcs sympathetic good for the show, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, I mean, Adar is a show creation as well. Like Adar does not exist in the canon, and
I was
I
just
mean,
gonna bring
it's
him up. I feel like we need to talk about him for a second here. Just in that, like,
talk about him.
well, I mean, I thought he was a
The
really
fact that he was Benjen Stark in the first season and now he's someone else.
I thought he was a really interesting character. And I don't know if that's why we're seeing like the orcs as more humanized or not, because just he's treating them definitely as more humanized than they were treated previously with all his comments about like loving them and like being their father and looking after them. And like, I mean, he genuinely seemed like he was both the villain and also sincerely wanted to create a place where these people could live and not
Yeah.
have to have fights anymore. So he was a sympathetic character, and he was also attempting to take down Sauron before he grows into what we know he becomes.
Sauron.
So I thought he was a really interesting character. Like his interactions with Galadriel were kind of always interesting, whether she was prisoner or they were meeting or whatever the
Yeah.
case was. Like I'm even just scrolling through a review of the last episode here on IGN, and like this reviewer even said like this was their most interesting character they thought in the whole show this season. They're sad that he's gone now, which I do think he was kind of an interesting character. And he also, let's not forget, freely gave up his ring
It's
that
true.
he had on, which like nobody else in the show really did that, except for, of course, Durin, who was, he could take it off whenever he wanted to. But I thought that was cool too. Like I was shocked to see him take off the ring and just like hand it over.
Yeah,
Mm.
I agree. I mean, I agree. I think he is a very sympathetic character, and like even more so, I think for me this season than in the first season. But I do,
That's because it's a different actor. So,
haha, this one looks more like Sean Bean.
yes, it was Sean Bean with an
Um,
alias.
But I feel like I wanted to know even more about him. Like, how did he become what he is? How did he become the father of the orcs? Like, I mean, you see, you get a sense of his relationship with them, but like, I just really would like to know more about how that came to be. And then it was frustrating for me, especially as I've recently been getting kind of deeper into the Tolkien stuff. It was frustrating in this episode when he's wearing the ring and his like wounds are healed and we see him in like his original elf form. Um Galadriel, like he says something about how Adar is a name he earned, and that he, she asked him what
Oh
his
yeah,
original name was, and he says something about like it's best forgotten or something like that. So like
yeah.
it's established that he was an elf and had an elven name, but there's no payoff as far, like I kind of wish there if given that they went to that point, I wish there had been some sort of further connection to like the lore from, Tolkien's history or something.
They could
Um,
maybe add that in a future season, just from like the elves could bring it up, and be like, and then they turn into like somebody could tell Galadriel, maybe Gil-galad, or somebody could tell Galadriel who he was. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think, yeah.
Maybe.
It certainly was one of the more dynamic and interesting characters.
Yeah,
I thought as well.
Before
for
we go
sure.
too far past him, also, I just have to also shout out the Celebrimbor character for most of the season kind of annoyed me. Just in that, like, he was such a wishy-washy, like, wah, little baby yes man to Sauron. But I will say in the last, like, episode, at least, if not episode and a half, maybe the last two episodes, like, I thought that guy did a really good job. Um, Finishing his character arc. The actor did a nice job as well, but the character was just written really well, like with how he thought he basically had outsmarted Sauron and like finding a way to die, and like that was pretty smart how he did find a way to make sure Sauron couldn't keep him alive essentially, and stood up for himself at the end. I don't know, I thought that character kind of did come full circle, which I enjoyed for his character arc to finish up. So
I agree with that.
I agree. Any other thoughts about any of these storylines or the season in general?
Moffrey Clark is still hot. Oh, stop it.
I have to be honest with you. In the first season, I don't know how strongly I would have agreed with that, but for some reason, she did do it for me this season.
It's all the dirt on the face.
Maybe.
Reminded you of all those ladies who used to date out by the dump.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but
It's a different podcast, but she was great in this season as well, I thought. And
yeah.
my God, I'm blanking. Elrond, there we go. Elrond was
You mean young Rob Stark from the flashbacks in Game of Thrones?
he was okay.
I mean Ned
Uh,
Stark. I mean Ned Stark. Young Ned Stark.
oh, and we got the sword. Oh, that was brought up here. I forgot about the sword.
Narsil.
Yeah,
That
Narsil.
is, yeah. I mean, that's along with Isildur being super important. I mean, Narsil is like maybe the most important thing to come up on this series so far. That will be broken. Spoiler alert: it will later be broken and then reforged as Anduril, which is Aragorn's sword.
Yes. I don't know. There were some cool shots in the season. I don't know if you're kind of just thinking of final thoughts here, but
Do you guys remember at the end of, I think it was episode 2, how it literally ends with Sauron using the phrase "the Lord of the Rings"?
is that what made you laugh so hard?
It made me laugh and want to throw something at my TV.
I wondered what it was because I remember just saying in the end of season two it'll make you guys laugh so hard, and
Yeah.
then
Oh
like we
my
watched
God.
it and I
I
was like, what
like.
was funny about that?
Oh yeah. It was like, wow, he said the thing. Like they ultimately end up saying Lord of the Rings multiple times this season. They also say the Rings of Power multiple times this season, which I mean, these are things that are said in the books in addition to be like names of things, but it just always feels silly when they
Yeah,
explicitly say the name of the thing. We see the Door of Durin in one of these episodes, which ultimately becomes the entrance to Moria,
oh, okay.
which famously, speak friend and enter.
Oh, you're talking. Oh, yeah. They were crafting the one down by the lake that they
Yeah,
put on the
the
base.
door that's like a gift that Celebrimbor gives to the dwarves.
I was thinking of one from The Hobbit where the bird has to like tap on it so many
Oh
times and
no,
stuff. Yeah, okay.
but I felt like there was maybe a little too much fan service in this season
Hmm. Well,
with all those random
I
things.
I did enjoy that they weren't building the Death Star, so they had that going for them.
Boo.
Uh, I did have multiple other criticisms that
Yes,
came up. If you
Please.
guys want to go over those,
do it.
Yes.
So-
Validate Justin's feelings.
to go over some of the like specific moments. It was like the scene where the elves led by Elrond are like coming supposedly to attack the orcs and Adar, and they like go a full charge at them and then just like stop short.
Yeah.
Just like made me, I was like, what the hell? Because he stops and then like they almost greet each other like Adar knew they were coming to talk. So why the fuck did they charge at him?
No. What had happened was they are charging at them to attack,
Yeah.
and then they roll out the crate that has Galadriel in it. And
Right.
when Elrond sees that they have Galadriel, he freaks out and has them all stop. Which still doesn't make any sense because there's no way that many people and that many horses all
Right.
racing straight forward are going to be able to just like pump the brakes and stop on a
Yeah.
dime.
Yeah, and he like barely like spoke it out loud even. It
Yeah.
wasn't like he yelled like stop. He
Yeah.
just raised his hand, was like stop. You
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah, I mean the way that plays out is definitely silly and like not believable, but I mean the motivation is because he sees that they have Galadriel, which he
Yeah,
probably
I
should have just kept going, but
right. I mean, I felt like they had some dialogue like after that though that like specifically felt like they were coming to talk, like it was a prearranged thing, but perhaps maybe not. Maybe that wasn't what's supposed to be.
There were a couple
Um,
times too where I felt like characters like warped across the world, which annoyed me. Elrond was in one. I can't remember exactly, but it was like we just saw him at this place, and then suddenly he showed up at this place, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
yeah. Well, I mean that goes back to what one of you guys was saying earlier about, needing a map or something, like a clear sense of where all these things are in relation to each
Mhm.
other. Like Khazad-dûm, where the dwarves are, is literally like right next door to Eregion. But I don't feel like we really get that sense until maybe this last episode.
Yeah,
So like there
that's
are
one.
certain locations that are close to each other, but we don't really see that. And then, I mean, again, like Numenor is supposed to be like way far from everything, but it feels like we've seen like Galadriel go there and back, and like it seems like characters can get there more easily. The geography is just a little weird.
Mm. Yeah.
What else you got, Brett?
Well, I mentioned the the siege engine that they did nothing about stopping. I mentioned the fact that we didn't go into detail about it, but like, so King Durin like attacks the Balrog and then fade to black and we move to the next scene. And they'd never come back to that at all to describe like, did he manage to kill the Balrog? Did the Balrog just kill King Durin and then just like go off on its merry way to go take a nap or something? Because like there's like nothing there. Like you would think that they would still be like fighting it or something, or like it's destroying Khazad-dûm or like something is going on there. But which is why the dwarven army was late essentially, but then they sent them anyways, so they're not there fighting it. So like what the hell is going on with it?
Yeah, season 3 should really start with like
We're gonna
that thing
find out in
ripping through a
season
wall
3.
or something. Because you
Yeah.
are right about that. That brings me to another thing I hated as well, which was the scene where Durin the King is going around like touching the walls with the ring to like be like, over here, dig here for the light, dig here for the light. And then I was like, man, like even the fact that they have like trees and shit growing down under there is impressive anyway. But I was like, where are they getting all this light from? And then they like take the camera and they go outside the mountain and they're like, well, he's just busting through the wall. And I was like, you don't know, like you need an expert to like tell you where the edge of the wall is on this mountain? Like you can't just walk outside the mountain and be like, oh, dig here.
Mm.
Was a little weird, I
That's the
thought.
point. I mean,
Little
speaking of that scene, for the most part, I think this show looks great. Like, I think, the costume and set design, I think it's the most expensive TV show ever made. And
Yeah.
by and large, it looks that way. One thing that drove me crazy, which I don't know if this registered with you guys at all, is the like pickaxes that the dwarves use to like try to dig the holes to find the light. To me, it looked like they had no weight to them whatsoever. Like it looked like they was made out of like cheap like hollow plastic or something. Like just the way they handled that. For some reason, I don't know. It's just like a super nitpicky thing that I locked onto. Like it just looked completely unbelievable. And I mean, I know presumably they're supposed to be, really strong to like wield these things to be able to bust through the rock or whatever, but it just those props specifically just kind of didn't work for me.
Mm,
I could see that. Yeah.
yeah.
But again, the Balrog looked fucking amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed that it essentially did the same thing that it did to Gandalf as well.
Oh, literally the same thing. Yeah.
I was like, I could have come up with something.
No.
I feel like that was another stupid fan service thing where it's like,
Yeah.
huh?
No.
Remember?
Wait, have
He's
you
gonna do
forgotten
that
what
to
this thing
Gandalf.
is? Let's remind you.
So that part bothered me more in this one because it wasn't the same thing that he did to Gandalf. When he did it to Gandalf, he could see Gandalf through the smoke. This one, he just randomly threw his whip up around some rocks and randomly
That's
caught the
fair.
guy's ankle. It was impressive.
Mhm.
I was like, wait, how did he doesn't even know where? Okay. Oh, goodness.
Other things that I came up in my my issues list. We see Arondir get like skewered by Adar, and
Yeah.
then like a
Thank
couple
you.
scenes later is just walking around like nothing happened at all.
When he showed up in like episode 8, I think, to help with like the city siege and around the outskirts of that, I even looked at Karen. I was like, wait, didn't he just die in the last episode?
Died essentially, yes.
And then he came back, which honestly, what was that guy's purpose this season?
Yeah.
I felt really bad for him. I thought he was going to be a mentor to the son, but then
Mm.
Isildur kind of took that role from him, and like he wasn't even in the first like 2 or 3 episodes. Which further, I was like, did that guy die in the finale? Like, I don't remember him dying, but maybe.
Yeah,
I
like
wonder,
his whole arc was like about revenge, and he didn't even do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wonder how much of what they were going to do with him got thrown because this is a weird thing about this season is that the reason that his love, Bronwyn, who is Theo's mom, is not in this season is that the actress who played her decided she didn't want to return to the show.
what the fuck? Seriously?
Like she was wounded at the end of season 1, but originally they were going to have her recover and she was going to be part of the show. But instead of recasting her, they just killed the character off screen in between seasons.
I did question, like, wait, wasn't she alive?
Yeah.
The last time we saw her.
So,
Okay, thank you.
I
I was more
wonder-
confused about that too.
Yeah, so I wonder how much of Arondir not really having much to do this season is related to that because
Interesting.
I would assume they originally had more with him and her planned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
But
too
yeah,
bad. I mean,
I agree he's not really very
This-
useful here.
besides Bisa and Durin, I mean, I liked that hot elf human couple, but
Yeah.
I was missing that. It's all right. We got a little Galadriel kissing on why can't an Elrond? God, I can't remember this guy's
Elrond.
name. Which that's not a thing, right? That's not a thing later, at least.
I mean, she is his mother-in-law in the future, so hey, she spoiler alert, she is also married.
In this show?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. They do.
So, yeah, I think in season 1 maybe they mentioned that her husband is presumed to have been killed in battle. Spoiler alert, he wasn't.
That happens with a lot of girls in this show. Oh,
It's true. Oh, womp womp.
stand at the harbor and look out yearningly.
Oh, you know what? Arondir did have one useful function in this season, which was in the finale, he asked Galadriel what she thought they should do, even though he doesn't really have any connection to the other elves, or like there's like no reason that his opinion should matter to everyone else.
He's their greatest warrior.
Sure.
I just made that up, but maybe.
Listen, he is not to warrioring what Celebrimbor is to smithing.
Oh,
Did you know that Celebrimbor is the greatest elven smith?
I knew that Arondir's accent changed about 5 times in that season, but he's the Scarlet Witch of their show. What else you got, Brad? You got some more?
Um, Similarly to Arondir surviving, how did Galadriel survive falling off a several 100-foot cliff
Yeah.
after she'd been impaled, stabbed through the heart with the crown? I don't know.
Yeah.
Which let me so that scene was something that I had an issue with because she has the rings, I believe. Wait, does she have the 9 rings at that point?
When she fell off,
Oh,
she
no,
only had her own.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, she
Yeah.
had given the rings to the orcs. Anyway,
I don't know.
she
Let
has
the
her
show
ring.
us on camera what happens to the 9 rings.
Well, she has her ring, and Sauron's
Yes.
trying to get that ring. And rather than let Sauron take it, she tries to off herself by falling off this cliff that Sauron can see right where she went. He's an immortal being. Not only that, there's clearly a way down there because that leads down to Eregion where everything else is. It would not have been that difficult for Sauron to get down there to retrieve the ring from her body. The only reason that doesn't happen is that, unbeknownst to Galadriel, because she has no way that that's happening, the dwarves show up to like save the day and fight off the orcs, and then they have to retreat. But like theoretically, in that moment, Galadriel's basically killing herself for no real reason.
Does seem that way now, yeah.
That's fair.
Also, I will say that I kind of loved the brief shots we got of the dwarves in action with their crossbows, just like fucking shit up.
It was
Yeah.
brief. It's so
Anyway.
brief that I barely remember it.
Back to your question about how Galadriel survived, elven magic.
I thought, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I
I thought
suppose.
what was going to happen in that scene was she was healing herself using her ring that he had given her, and that was going to be like the irony of her coming back in the fight, but that did not happen. So,
I mean, it's possible that her ring may have helped prevent her from being injured more than she would have. I feel like we do also see her kind of hit like the top of one of the trees.
yeah, there's
So
like a
maybe it
bounce,
kind of broke her fall a little bit. I don't know.
like
Perhaps.
a bounce from far away when they do the
I
fight
mean, the
shot.
whole point of
Not that they would have known what that was anyway.
no, I mean, I feel like the whole point of that whole thing is that subsequently Elrond has to put her ring on to help heal her. So he's kind of getting over his, hatred of the rings,
Yeah.
at least the elven rings.
So the elven rings aren't tainted by Sauron,
Correct.
but doesn't Gil-galad start to turn wonky as soon as he gets one?
Well, so it's in the show, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit confusing even in the books because even though those rings are like they're like mostly free from Sauron's influence because he never touched them or like was directly involved in their making, my understanding is that the One Ring would still have power over them.
Okay.
But like Sauron doesn't have the One Ring at this point, so
Yeah.
theoretically he shouldn't really have that much influence.
I guess nor does he have it in Lord of the Rings, so
Yeah.
okay. That's fair.
But I do feel like the show is kind of implying that he still has some influence over them, like more so than is really shown in the books.
Okay.
Anyway, any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I don't have any more comments to add. I'm just curious, like, assuming this did well enough for them rating wise, I'm curious, like, what they see as the end game for this, because we've talked about on multiple reviews on here, like prequels are just so tricky. So like, are they going to try to shove 6 seasons out of these characters that we know eventually have to end up at point A, B, and C, or is this like they
I
take
feel
one
like
season at a time? Like this is tricky, you know?
I've heard either 4 or 5 seasons. Um, I mean, my guess would be the end point is Isildur cutting the ring off Sauron's hand and kind of like ending that, because I think that was the end of the Second Age.
All the way up to the flashback in the trilogy.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing that is really weird about this show is it is really compressing time.
Hmm.
Like in the book, Sauron disguised as Anatar spends literally centuries in Eregion working with Celebrimbor on the rings.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like so it's I mean, the Second Age is like thousands of years and they're really like pushing a lot of stuff together in this show. I mean, honestly, that's one thing that's really surprised me listening to the book of Fellowship of the Ring is the movies also really compress time. I mean, not quite to that extent, but like in the movies, it seems like Bilbo has his 111th birthday, and then like right after that, they learn that the ring is the One Ring and set off on their adventure. In actuality, in the book, it is 17 years later.
Wow.
Like Bilbo has his birthday and goes off, like disappears like he does in the movie and goes off. But Frodo spends a full 17 years, like, is like a full grown adult 50-year-old hobbit by the time the shit with the ring starts going down. And like, he has to, and
Huh.
like every step of the way in the book is like way extended. Like, even after he learns about how dangerous the ring is and that he has to do something about it, it's like months before he sets off. And then, when they're in Rivendell hanging out with the elves, they're there for months. Like it's this really drawn out timeline.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, obviously, for the sake of adaptation, especially the movies, it makes sense to, condense that stuff. But yeah, this series is like really just compressing thousands of years of Tolkien's history.
Is that place that the elves ended with the river? Was that supposed to be
It's going to be
Rivendell?
Rivendell. It's got to be.
That's what I thought because I was like, oh, they're just going to kind of establish Rivendell in this place. And then they were like, let's go fight instead. And I was like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. I think it is canonical that after the fall of Eregion, um, Elrond basically founds Rivendell.
Hey,
Spoiler, but I feel like you could also just infer that from that last scene. It's very watery,
Yeah, a little
very
waterfalls.
peaceful. They say it's like a sanctuary. I mean, it seems pretty obvious it's going to end up being Rivendell.
what's
Although I
the
agree, I did think it was weird that it seemed like they're going to go off and fight right away.
what was the what's the spot? There was one scene in this series where they showed a scene. No, sorry. There's a scene in this series where they showed a location from Lord of the Rings, and it was like when they had like that big platform that stuck out into the sky with like the trees. You know what I'm talking about? It's like I think it's where they try to burn that person alive in the original trilogy. You know what I'm
Oh,
talking about? It's like an iconic scene in the original
Jesus.
trilogy,
Yeah,
and it popped up for like 1 second in this series, and I was like, wait, where's that at again? Like I can't.
I'm trying to think
They
what
try
you're
to kill
talking
what's
about.
his name, Boromir's
Minas
brother.
Tirith.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
was in this show for like 5 seconds, right? Am I wrong on that?
There's something that looked exactly like it. I don't know if it's meant to be the same place.
I thought it had like that big platform that stuck out and
Yes,
like that tree that's the color, and I don't know what context it was in this series. It was just like
Okay,
trickling
so
for 1 second.
apparently the Palace of Numenor, there's an exterior shot that looks a lot like Minas Tirith,
Oh, okay.
I felt like it was, yeah, in Numenor where we saw
Okay.
that.
which, spoiler alert, that makes a lot of sense.
Because they're going to bring their city to the new place? Is that what's going on? Or what are you saying? They're going to drain the ocean and
The
make it the city?
there's There are ancestral ties between Numenor and Minas Tirith and
The,
Gondor
the
in the
two
future.
human races.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll say no more. Sauron.
it's okay. I'm just glad my daughter doesn't change her opinion of me every episode. Oof.
What?
You know, the Captain of the Guard's daughter every episode's like, I love you, don't die. I hate you, we must kill you and
That's fair.
overthrow the
Yeah,
I love
that's
you, we must save you. No, don't just
see, I thought we were gonna wrap it up, and now you're making me mad again. No, she is another show creation, and she is like completely pointless, I feel like.
ugh. I was pretty bummed out when I don't know the other character's name, but like the captain's right hand man there just like gets straight up fucking murdered in the street in that one scene in
Yeah,
like two
that sucked.
seconds. I was like,
Mm.
oh.
I really like I want Kemen, Farazan's son, to just have like the worst death ever. A lot of people are speculating that he might end up as one of the Nazgul, but I hope that doesn't
Ooh, interesting.
happen. That seems like too good a fate for him. I mean, that's probably something we're going to get in season two. I mean, now that the Nine Rings for Men exist, we don't
Yeah.
really. I don't think canonically anyone actually knows who the Nazgul were before they became that, other than they were like powerful kings among men. But
That's
I
the
don't think
tricky
any
thing
like
is
specific
I don't know who
identities are
they're going to get
known.
these rings to because I don't feel like there's even like three human characters that are important enough for them to get
No,
Yeah,
rings.
they have
So
to really develop the world before that even happens.
yeah, Farazan. Farazan
maybe
just gets all nine of them.
maybe Farazan becomes
Yeah.
Saruman. Oh snap!
Pheromon.
Farazan's discount Italian
Sarazan.
food. Shall call it Fazoli's.
Oh no. Anyway, on that note,
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
let's wrap this up. Let's maybe do some final thoughts and some ratings. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, buddy. I can go first, doesn't matter. There were some parts that I thought were just not so well done in this show, and some plots that I cared little about in this show, and there were some things that I just didn't particularly love, like some of the character arcs, some of the characters themselves, some of the weird, I don't know, like we mentioned, it felt like characters could seemingly traverse this world in like a matter of seconds if it was called for the scene, and other times they're like, oh, but a lot of that again goes back to like, I don't really understand where this stuff is. Even as we're recording this, I'm in the background over here with multiple tabs open, attempting to like overlay this map with the known Lord of the Rings property map, and I still don't understand where the hell I'm looking at stuff right now. So I don't know if it's as simple as like, give me two transparencies that I can lay on top of each other that like show where this stuff is, or like I do know it shows on this map Mordor is in the south, and I'm pretty positive it's in the north in Lord of the Rings, right? So is we're saying everything in that time period's taking place south of Mordor, and this is all north and west of Mordor? Is that part of my confusion here? So these are all new places? I don't know. I'm confused. But that's just a geographical quibble of this. There were a lot of things I did enjoy. Standout characters again for me at the end. I did like Celebrimbor, and I also enjoyed Adar and I think Galadriel as well. But there were some plots, especially like talking through them with you guys tonight. I will say that I'm like, yeah, Numenor didn't really add much. Like a lot of the scenes with the dwarves didn't really add too much, even though I like some of the dwarf characters. So this is far from a perfect season for me. I'm going to give this 6.75, I think sounds about fair for where I'm at with this.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, I came into this fairly interested in seeing the second season. I think it looks visually, it continues to be pretty impressive overall. A lot of the landscapes look amazing, and the costumes and the the cityscapes all look really cool. I did in the first half of the season find myself feeling like a lot of it was kind of dry. Like there's a very epic look, but it managed to be like feel like just dry and just like serious all the time. There's like a lot of dialogue that felt like it was written to have more of an impact that when I heard it didn't really do anything for me. I think part of that is because one of my biggest problems with this season is that I didn't feel a lot of connection to most of these characters. There's a few that are that I like that are pretty cool. A lot of them feel like they just don't have a lot of either depth or like they're not dynamic. They're not really fun. There's very little humor anywhere to be found. And I didn't feel like a lot of the characters were like terribly charismatic through the season, which made me like not really care too much about what was going on. I felt like the second half of the season was ramping up a bit. Like I say, I did like the initial parts of the action and the battle scenes. But in the end, it felt like they either did not they did not hire someone who was like really good at like doing like coordinating battle sequences, or else just I don't know what happened there, but there was a lot in that battle. So like I've had a few moments of like, oh wow, this is kind of like the movies in the scale and how grand it is, and then it like just all fell apart. And the battles in the last, especially the finale, was just so many like silly sequences and things that just didn't make sense. And I don't know, it just kind of like lost that part of it that I was enjoying. I just kind of lost that.
Is that Brett going to be our new Justin?
Uh-oh.
Probably not kind of quite to that point. And I think like the last point I think I would make is, coming from my standpoint of not knowing the lore real well, I did kind of like look around and just see what other people are saying. And I think a lot of the criticisms coming are from the fact that they are making changes from the lore fairly heavily in a lot of places. And like most people seem to like really hate that. And not having that knowledge, I didn't feel like there were definitely problems in the plot, but it wasn't. I didn't have that part of it dragging me down like Justin does. I guess overall, I kind of enjoyed it, but I was kind of like out of it for a good portion of it as well. I probably would give it right around a 5.0. I think with all the with not being really engaged with it and having a lot of like technical issues along the way. It was just okay for me.
I feel like that's a pretty shockingly low score for Fantasy Guy Brett over here.
Man.
Keep in mind, dear audience, Justin didn't even get through 2 episodes before he quit on this show, so there's that also.
Oh, another point I meant to make was like they had many moments where they like could have put in a really epic sequence and just didn't. Like just nothing happened. Like when the dwarves finally showed up, it could have been like with a big, almost like a hammer blow, like kind of thing to the orcs, but they just like all of a sudden they're there and like the battle just continued. Like there wasn't anything grand about it when they finally showed up.
Yeah. We see like 2 seconds of them shooting crossbows at people, and that's about it.
Yeah, I felt there was a lot of moments like that where they could have stuck in something really epic and it would have like really boosted it for me, and just those never happened.
That's fair, man. Let me think a second. Try to summarize my thoughts.
Bum, bum, what a lily's bringing. Comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? Hey, come, merry doll, merry-o, goldberry, merry, yeah.
See, the thing with Tom Bombadil is you always think he's done singing, but then he just keeps fucking going on and on and on. I am honestly kind of surprised that I am going to end up kind of between you two gentlemen, and not in the fun way. like I said at the beginning, I was pretty high on the first season of the show. I had some concerns with it, but I think for to a large extent, just I was just excited to spend time in Middle Earth, and I think I actually said that when I was wrapping up my thoughts on the first season. It had its ups and downs, but overall, I thought it was just kind of a fine time in Middle Earth, back in a world that I appreciate. This season, still kind of enjoyed spending some time in Middle Earth, but I do think that I had a lot of the same concerns that Brett raised. Like I said, the Numenor stuff really just didn't work for me at all. I just didn't care. And realistically, that's true of just a lot of the stuff that happened over the course of this season. I mean, there were things that I really enjoyed. Even if I don't think the writing was always the greatest, I think that most of the performances were really strong. I do, especially like I said, now that I'm kind of getting into the books and diving more into the lore, I kind of can see where some of the people are coming from with their concerns regarding the adaptation choices. I mean, historically, I have been one who has said, let an adaptation be an adaptation, kind of by nature of the word adaptation. It implies that there's some change going on. But I feel like it's hard when it comes to Tolkien because he spent so much of his life building out this world. I mean, the Rings of Power series is literally based on like appendices that he wrote to serve as, background data for the actual narrative of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like it was important to him that all of these facts were known and all of this history was written and established. So when an author goes to that length and you start taking excessive liberties with it, I think it can kind of raise an eyebrow. Overall, I did still enjoy this season. Definitely not as much as the first one, though. And I am going to come in at 6.0.
Oh my gosh.
I
I
know.
didn't think mine was going to be the high score.
I was kind of shocked.
Boy,
There we are, though. Rings of
Justin
Power.
had been here. Oof.
Watch it or don't.
I mean, what do we got here? 5.92 for the average.
Wow.
Woo!
That is not, I mean, it's,
It's gonna get listed in the
That's what you get
Fondies.
for $1 billion, though.
I guess
So,
so. Billions
Wow.
of dollars, man.
That's
The good news is, from what I've gathered, this is a passion project for Jeff Bezos, so he's just going to keep throwing money at it.
okay. Well, we got that going for us, I guess.
Yay. All right. Well, this has been another episode of The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. What?
No.
I don't have any more queued up, unfortunately. This has been another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. We have had with us today Brett and Cody, and I am America's favorite podcast host, Joe. Thank you for tuning in. Check us out next week when we will be continuing our Spooktober season.
Spooky.
Ooh, bye.
Go watch Agatha All Along. They've only answered 4 out of our 11 initial questions. Bye.
I still have to catch up on this week's episode.
Where's the map, Josh? Hey, fondlings and fondlers. This has been another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, your favorite podcast. It's most people's favorite podcast, or at least so my mom tells me. You can check us out all over the place online at our homepage, www.fondpod.com or fondpodcast.com. You can also check us out across your social media sites, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your streamed podcast. Thanks so much.